The courtroom was silent, the air thick with tension. Every eye was fixed on the polished wooden coffin placed at the center of the room. It was an unusual sight, a coffin in a court of law. The judge, a stern woman with sharp eyes and a voice that carried authority, had just issued the order, "Open the coffin. Now." The bailiffs hesitated, glancing at each other nervously. This was no ordinary case. It had started as a simple property dispute but had unraveled into something far darker. The coffin belonged to a man named Daniel Hart, a wealthy businessman who had died under mysterious circumstances 2 years ago. His death had been ruled a suicide, but his daughter, Emily Hart, had never believed it. She had fought tirelessly to reopen the case, convinced that her father had been murdered. Emily sat in the front row, her hands clenched tightly in her lap. Her eyes were red from sleepless nights, but her determination was unshakable. She had spent every penny of her inheritance on lawyers, private investigators, and forensic experts. And now, finally, her persistence had paid off. The judge had agreed to exhume Daniel's body for further investigation. As the bailiffs began to unscrew the coffin lid, the room held its breath. The sound of the screws turning echoed like a countdown. Emily's heart pounded in her chest. She had waited so long for this moment, but now that it was here, she wasn't sure she was ready for what might come next. The lid came off and the bailiff stepped back. The judge leaned forward, her expression unreadable. The forensic team moved in, their gloves snapping into place. Emily stood up, unable to stay seated. She had to see. She had to know. But what they found inside the coffin was not what anyone expected. Instead of Daniel Hart's remains, the coffin was filled with bundles of documents, photographs, and a single USB drive. The forensic team exchanged puzzled looks. Emily's breath caught in her throat. What does this mean? Where is my father's body? The judge picked up one of the documents and scanned it quickly. Her face darkened. She looked up at Emily, then at the lawyers, and finally at the bailiffs. "Seal the courtroom," she ordered. "No one leaves until we get to the bottom of this." The room erupted into chaos. Lawyers argued, reporters scrambled to take notes, and Emily stood frozen, her mind racing. The documents in the coffin were clearly important, but why had they been hidden there? And who had put them there? Most importantly, where was her father? As the bailiffs began to enforce the judge's order, Emily felt a mix of hope and dread. She had fought so hard for this moment, but now she realized that the truth might be far more dangerous than she had ever imagined. The courtroom was now sealed, and the tension was palpable. The judge, her voice steady but firm, ordered the forensic team to carefully examine the contents of the coffin. The documents were spread out on a large table, and the USB drive was handed over to a tech expert to analyze. Emily Hart stood nearby, her eyes darting from one item to another, her mind racing with questions. The first document that caught everyone's attention was a handwritten letter. It was addressed to Emily. The judge picked it up and read it aloud. "My dearest Emily, if you are reading this, it means my worst fears have come true. I am sorry for the pain I have caused you, but I had no choice. The truth is far more dangerous than you can imagine. Trust no one, not the lawyers, not the police, not even those closest to you. The people responsible for this will stop at nothing to keep their secrets buried. I have hidden the evidence here, in the only place I knew they would never look. Be careful, my child. The truth will set you free, but it may also destroy everything you hold dear." Emily's hands trembled as she listened. Her father's voice seemed to echo in her mind. What had he been involved in? Who was he warning her about? The questions swirled in her head, but there were no answers. Not yet. The forensic team continued to sort through the documents. There were bank statements, property deeds, and contracts, all pointing to a web of financial transactions involving some of the most powerful people in the city. There were also photographs, grainy images of meetings in dimly lit rooms, men exchanging envelopes, and vehicles with license plates that had been deliberately obscured. But the most shocking discovery came when the tech expert inserted the USB drive into a laptop. The screen flickered to life, and a video began to play. It showed Daniel Hart, alive and well, sitting in what appeared to be a safe house. He looked directly into the camera and began to speak. "Emily, if you're watching this, it means I'm already gone. I've been investigating a criminal network that operates at the highest levels of power. They're involved in money laundering, corruption, and worse. I thought I could expose them, but I underestimated how far they would go to protect themselves. I faked my death to buy myself time, but I know they'll find me eventually. Everything you need to bring them down is in this coffin. But be warned, they have eyes everywhere. Trust no one." The video ended abruptly, leaving the courtroom in stunned silence. Emily felt a wave of emotions: relief that her father had not taken his own life, anger at the people who had driven him to such extremes, and fear for what lay ahead. She turned to the judge, her voice trembling but determined. "We need to find out who these people are. We need to bring them to justice." The judge nodded, her expression grave. "This case is far bigger than I anticipated. We'll need to proceed carefully. One wrong move and we could all be in danger." As the forensic team continued their work, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The people her father had warned her about were powerful, and they would do whatever it took to keep their secrets hidden. The courtroom had transformed into a makeshift investigation hub. The judge, now fully aware of the gravity of the situation, had called in a trusted team of federal agents to assist. The documents in USB drive were being analyzed with meticulous care, and every piece of information was being cross-referenced to build a clearer picture of the criminal network Daniel Hart had been investigating. Emily sat in a corner of the room, her mind racing. She couldn't stop thinking about her father's video message. Who were these people? How deep did their influence go? She glanced at the documents spread across the table. Bank statements, property deeds, and contracts, all pointing to a labyrinth of corruption. The photographs were even more chilling. They showed shadowy figures exchanging envelopes, meeting in secluded locations, and driving vehicles with obscured license plates. It was clear that this was no ordinary criminal operation. One of the federal agents, a seasoned investigator named Agent Morales, approached Emily. He had been briefed on the case and was now leading the team analyzing the evidence. "Ms. Hart," he began, his tone respectful but urgent, "we've identified some of the individuals in these photographs. They're high-profile figures, politicians, business executives, even law enforcement officials. Your father was right. This network operates at the highest levels of power." Emily's heart sank. How could they possibly take on such powerful people? But she knew she couldn't back down, not after everything her father had sacrificed. "What about the USB drive?" she asked. "Was there anything else on it?" Agent Morales nodded. "We found encrypted files. Our tech team is working on decrypting them now. But based on what we've seen so far, it's clear that your father was gathering evidence to expose this network. He must have known they would come after him, which is why he faked his death and hid the evidence in the coffin." Emily's eyes welled up with tears, but she quickly wiped them away. She couldn't afford to break down, not now. "What's our next move?" she asked, her voice steady. "We need to follow the money," Agent Morales replied. "These bank statements show large sums being transferred between offshore accounts. If we can trace the transactions, we might be able to identify the key players in this network, but we have to be careful. If they find out we're onto them, they'll do everything in their power to stop us." The judge, who had been listening intently, spoke up. "This case is now a federal matter. I'll issue a gag order to prevent any leaks. No one outside this room can know what we've discovered. Ms. Hart, I know this is a lot to take in, but your father's evidence could be the key to bringing down one of the most dangerous criminal networks in the country. We need your help." Emily nodded, her resolve hardening. "I'll do whatever it takes." As the team continued their work, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that they were racing against time. The people her father had warned her about were powerful and ruthless. They had already taken so much from her: her father, her peace of mind. She wouldn't let them get away with it. But as she looked around the room, she couldn't help but wonder. Who could she trust? Her father's warning echoed in her mind. Trust no one. Even the people in this room, the judge, the federal agents. Could they be trusted? Or were they part of the network her father had been trying to expose? The federal agents worked through the night, their laptops glowing in the dimly lit courtroom. Emily stayed close, watching as they decrypted files, traced bank transactions, and cross-referenced names from the documents and photographs. The tension in the room was palpable, but there was also a sense of urgency, a race against time to uncover the truth before the network could strike back. Around 3 a.m., the tech team finally broke through the encryption on the USB drive. Agent Morales called everyone over to his laptop, his face a mix of exhaustion and excitement. "We've got something," he said, pulling up a series of files. "These are detailed records of illegal transactions, money laundering, bribes, even evidence of human trafficking. But the most damning part is this." He opened a file labeled Operation Blacklight. It was a comprehensive dossier on the criminal network, complete with names, dates, and locations. At the top of the list was a name that made Emily's blood run cold: Victor Crane. "Victor Crane," Emily whispered, her voice trembling. "The billionaire philanthropist? He's involved in this?" Agent Morales nodded grimly. "According to your father's records, Crane is the mastermind behind the entire operation. He's been using his wealth and influence to cover up his crimes for years. The politicians, the law enforcement officials, the business executives, they're all working for him." Emily felt a wave of disbelief. Victor Crane was one of the most respected figures in the country. He donated millions to charity, funded schools and hospitals, and was often seen as a beacon of hope. How could someone like him be involved in something so dark? The judge, who had been silent until now, spoke up. "This changes everything. If Crane is involved, we're dealing with someone who has the resources to manipulate the system at every level. We need to move carefully. One misstep and he'll bury us." Emily's mind raced. What was her father's connection to Crane? Why had he been investigating him? She turned to Agent Morales. "Is there anything in the files about my father? Anything that explains why he got involved in this?" Agent Morales scrolled through the documents until he found a folder labeled Hart Investigation. He opened it and began to read aloud. "Daniel Hart was initially hired by Crane to oversee his financial operations. However, during his time working for Crane, Hart discovered irregularities in the accounts. He began to dig deeper and uncovered evidence of illegal activities. When he confronted Crane, he was threatened and told to drop the investigation. Instead, Hart went underground, gathering evidence to expose the network. He knew the risks, but believed it was his duty to bring the truth to light." Emily's heart ached as she listened. Her father had always been a man of integrity, someone who believed in doing the right thing, no matter the cost. But she couldn't help but feel a pang of guilt. If only she had known what he was going through. If only she could have helped him. Agent Morales interrupted her thoughts. "There's more. Hart's files include a list of safe houses and contacts he used while investigating Crane. If we can locate these safe houses, we might find additional evidence, or even witnesses who can testify against Crane." The judge nodded. "We'll need to act quickly. Crane will already be on high alert. If he finds out we have this information, he'll do everything in his power to destroy it." Emily stood up, her determination renewed. "Let's start with the safe houses. If my father left anything behind, we need to find it before Crane does." As the team prepared to move out, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into a trap. Victor Crane was a man who thrived on control. He wouldn't let them take him down without a fight. But she also knew that her father's legacy and the truth depended on what they did next. The first safe house on Daniel Hart's list was located in an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city. The federal agents, along with Emily and the judge, arrived just before dawn. The area was eerily quiet, the only sound the crunch of gravel under their feet as they approached the building. Agent Morales signaled for the team to spread out. "Stay alert," he whispered. "We don't know what we're walking into." Emily's heart pounded as she followed the agents inside. The warehouse was dark and musty, with broken windows letting in faint streaks of early morning light. Dust covered the floor, and the air was thick with the smell of decay. It was clear that no one had been here in a long time, or so it seemed. As they moved deeper into the warehouse, they found a hidden door behind a stack of crates. Agent Morales pried it open, revealing a narrow staircase leading down to a basement. The team descended cautiously, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. The basement was a stark contrast to the rest of the warehouse. It was clean and organized, with a desk, a computer, and shelves filled with files and equipment. It was clear that this had been Daniel Hart's secret workspace. Emily's eyes filled with tears as she looked around. This was where her father had spent his final days, working tirelessly to expose the truth. She could almost feel his presence in the room. Agent Morales began searching the desk while the other agents combed through the files. Emily noticed a small, locked drawer in the corner of the room. She tried to open it, but it was sealed tight. "Over here," she called out. "I think there's something in this drawer." Agent Morales came over and examined the lock. "It's a biometric lock," he said. "It requires a fingerprint to open." Emily's heart skipped a beat. "Do you think it's my father's?" "Only one way to find out," Agent Morales replied, pulling out a small device. He scanned the lock and then handed the device to Emily. "Place your thumb here. If your father programmed it to recognize you, it should open." Emily hesitated for a moment, then pressed her thumb against the device. There was a soft click, and the drawer slid open. Inside was a small notebook and a flash drive. Emily picked up the notebook and flipped through the pages. It was filled with her father's handwriting, notes, sketches, and names. One name stood out: Victor Crane. "This is it," Emily whispered. "This is what my father was working on." Agent Morales took the flash drive and plugged it into the computer. The screen flickered to life, revealing a series of video files. He clicked on the first one, and Daniel Hart's face appeared on the screen. "If you're watching this, it means you've found my safe house," Daniel began. "I've gathered enough evidence to bring down Victor Crane and his network, but I know they'll stop at nothing to silence me. That's why I've hidden this evidence in multiple locations. If anything happens to me, you'll need to find the other safe houses to piece everything together." The video ended abruptly, leaving the team in stunned silence. Emily felt a mix of emotions: pride in her father's bravery, anger at the people who had driven him to such extremes, and fear for what lay ahead. Agent Morales turned to Emily. "Your father was a hero. He risked everything to expose the truth. We need to honor his legacy by finishing what he started." Emily nodded, her resolve hardening. "Let's find the other safe houses. We can't let Crane get away with this." As the team prepared to leave, Emily noticed something written on the last page of the notebook. It was a single sentence written in her father's handwriting. "The truth will set you free, but it will also destroy everything you thought you knew." With the evidence from the first safe house secured, the team moved quickly to the next location on Daniel Hart's list. But as they drove through the city, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The weight of her father's warning, "Trust no one," hung heavy in her mind. She glanced at Agent Morales, who was focused on the road, and then at the judge, who sat in the back seat, her expression unreadable. Could she trust them? Or were they part of the network her father had been trying to expose? The second safe house was a small, unassuming apartment in a quiet neighborhood. As they approached the building, Agent Morales received a call from one of his team members. His face darkened as he listened. "We've got a problem," he said, hanging up. "One of the other safe houses on the list has been compromised. It was raided just an hour ago. Everything's gone." Emily's heart sank. Crane knows we're onto him. Agent Morales nodded grimly. "We need to move fast. If he's already hitting the other locations, we might not have much time." They entered the apartment building and made their way to the safe house. The door was locked, but Agent Morales picked it with ease. Inside, the apartment was sparse: a single room with a desk, a computer, and a filing cabinet. It was clear that Daniel Hart had used this place as a secondary workspace. Emily immediately went to the filing cabinet and began searching through the files. Most of them were financial records, transactions, invoices, and contracts, all pointing back to Victor Crane. But there was something else. A list of names, each one marked with a red asterisk. "What do these mean?" Emily asked, holding up the list. Agent Morales examined it closely. "These are people who were involved in Crane's operations but turned against him. Some of them are dead, others disappeared." Emily's stomach churned. "Do you think Crane had them killed?" "It's possible," Agent Morales replied. "But we need more evidence. Let's see what's on the computer." He booted up the computer and began searching through the files. Most of them were encrypted, but the tech team had given him a decryption tool before they left. As the files began to unlock, a chilling picture emerged. The computer contained detailed records of Crane's operations: drug trafficking, arms smuggling, and even human trafficking. There were also videos, interrogations, meetings, and transactions, all implicating Crane and his associates. But the most shocking discovery was a file labeled Eliminations. Agent Morales opened the file, and the team watched in horror as a video began to play. It showed a group of men being executed in a remote location. The man giving the order was unmistakable Victor Crane. Emily felt sick to her stomach. "He's a monster," she whispered. Before they could process what they had just seen, the sound of breaking glass shattered the silence. Agent Morales immediately drew his weapon and motioned for everyone to get down. "We've got company," he said, his voice low. The door burst open, and a group of armed men stormed in. They were dressed in black, their faces covered with masks. Emily recognized the insignia on their uniforms. It was the same one she had seen in her father's files. These were Crane's men. "Hands up!" one of the men barked, pointing his weapon at the team. Agent Morales hesitated for a moment, then slowly raised his hands. Emily and the judge did the same. The men began searching the room, grabbing the files and the computer. "Crane sends his regards," one of the men sneered, his voice dripping with malice. Emily's mind raced. How had they found them so quickly, unless someone had tipped them off? As the men began to leave, one of them turned to Emily. "You should have stayed out of this," he said, his eyes cold. "Now you're going to regret it." The team was left in stunned silence as the men disappeared into the night. Emily's hands were trembling, but her resolve was stronger than ever. Crane thought he could intimidate her, but he was wrong. She wasn't going to back down, not now, not ever. Agent Morales turned to her, his expression grim. "We need to get out of here. Crane knows we're onto him, and he's not going to stop until we're all dead." Emily nodded, her jaw set. "Then we'll have to take him down before he gets the chance." The team regrouped at a secure location, a hidden bunker used by federal agents for high-stakes operations. The atmosphere was tense, but there was no time to waste. Victor Crane's network was closing in, and every second counted. Emily, Agent Morales, and the judge sat around a table surrounded by the evidence they had gathered from the safe houses. "We have enough to bring Crane down," Agent Morales said, spreading out the files. "But we need to act fast. If we wait too long, he'll find a way to cover his tracks." Emily nodded, her eyes scanning the documents. "What's the plan?" "We'll need to coordinate a raid on Crane's estate," Agent Morales explained. "It's heavily guarded, but if we move quickly and quietly, we can catch him off guard. Once we have him in custody, we'll present the evidence to the media. There's no way he can weasel out of this." The judge leaned forward, her expression serious. "This is going to be dangerous. Crane has powerful allies, and they'll do everything in their power to stop us. We need to be prepared for anything." Emily's mind raced. She knew the risks, but she also knew that this was their only chance to bring Crane to justice. "I'm in," she said firmly. "Whatever it takes." Under the cover of darkness, the team moved in on Crane's estate. It was a sprawling mansion surrounded by high walls and security cameras. Agent Morales led the operation, coordinating with a team of trusted federal agents. Emily stayed close, her heart pounding as they approached the main gate. The agents disabled the security system and breached the gate, moving swiftly and silently through the grounds. They encountered minimal resistance. Crane's guards were caught off guard and quickly subdued. Within minutes, they had reached the mansion. Emily followed Agent Morales inside, her senses on high alert. The mansion was eerily quiet, the only sound the soft hum of the air conditioning. They moved from room to room, searching for Crane. Finally, they found him in his study, sitting behind a large mahogany desk. He looked up as they entered, his expression calm and composed. "I've been expecting you," Crane said, his voice smooth and unbothered. "You've caused quite a stir, Ms. Hart. But I'm afraid your little crusade ends here." Emily stepped forward, her anger boiling over. "You're a monster, Crane. You've destroyed countless lives, including my father's. But it's over. We have the evidence. You're going to pay for what you've done." Crane smirked, leaning back in his chair. "Evidence? Do you really think that matters? I own the courts, the police, the media. You can't touch me." Agent Morales stepped forward, his weapon trained on Crane. "You're under arrest. You have the right to remain silent." Before he could finish, Crane pressed a button under his desk. The room was suddenly filled with the sound of alarms, and the doors slammed shut, trapping the team inside. "You really thought it would be that easy," Crane said, his smirk widening. "I've been playing this game for decades. You're just amateurs." Emily's heart raced as she realized they had walked into a trap, but she refused to give up. She glanced around the room looking for a way out. Her eyes landed on a ventilation grate near the ceiling. "Morales," she whispered, nodding toward the grate. Agent Morales understood immediately. While Crane was distracted, taunting the team, Morales quietly climbed onto a chair and began unscrewing the grate. "You're all going to disappear," Crane continued, his voice dripping with malice. "No one will ever know what happened to you. And your precious evidence, it'll be destroyed before the night is over." Just as Crane finished his sentence, Morales pulled the grate free and helped Emily and the judge climb into the ventilation shaft. They moved quickly, crawling through the narrow passageway as Crane's men burst into the study. "Find them!" Crane shouted, his voice filled with rage. "I want them dead." The escape. The team emerged from the ventilation shaft on the other side of the mansion near the garage. They quickly commandeered a car and sped away just as Crane's men began searching the grounds. "We need to get to the media," Emily said, clutching the flash drive containing the evidence. "If we can get this out to the public, Crane won't be able to cover it up." Agent Morales nodded, his hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. "There's a news station nearby. We'll head there." Within hours, the evidence was broadcast across the nation. The videos, documents, and recordings of Crane's crimes were played on every major news network. The public was outraged, and the pressure on law enforcement was immense. Crane's allies tried to distance themselves, but it was too late. The evidence was undeniable. Within days, Crane was arrested, along with dozens of his associates. The network he had built over decades crumbled under the weight of the truth. Emily stood outside the courthouse, watching as Crane was led away in handcuffs. She felt a mix of emotions: relief, sadness, and a deep sense of closure. Her father's sacrifice had not been in vain. The truth had finally been exposed. Agent Morales approached her, his expression solemn. "Your father would be proud of you," he said. "You did what no one else could." Emily nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "It's not over yet. There's still so much work to do. But at least now we have a chance to make things right." As she walked away from the courthouse, Emily felt a sense of hope. The road ahead would be long and difficult, but she knew that she had the strength to face it. Her father's legacy would live on, not just in the evidence he had gathered, but in the fight for justice that she would continue to lead.
Subscribe and press the bell icon so that you never miss the amazing video.